Alright, buckle up, because we've got a lot to talk about today. From GTA 6's rumored $100 price tag to The Last of Us Part 3 possibly being in advanced production, things are getting real in the gaming world. But that's not all. Ubisoft shareholders are literally planning a protest. The Witcher 4 is changing up combat in a big way, and Naughty Dog's new sci-fi game, Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, is still a giant mystery. Oh, and if you've been eyeing PSVR 2, now might be the time to grab it because it just hit its lowest price ever. So let's break it all down, because some of this news, yeah, it's about to shake up the industry. I've been thinking a lot about why split fiction is so freaking awesome. And no, I don't mean in some vague, oh, it's a cool game kind of way. I mean really thinking about it. What makes it special? What makes it feel different? But before I get into that, hey, you? Yeah, you? The one half watching this video, already scrolling for what to click next. Hold up, focus for just a second, because what I'm about to tell you might just lead you to your next favorite game. So here's the deal. Think of your top 10 favorite games of all time. You know the ones, the games that shaped your taste, the ones that gave you those moments. Maybe it was that heart-pounding fight against a dragon in Dragon Age 2, or that first time you took a leap of faith in Assassin's Creed. Maybe it's the nostalgic buzz of beating your first Castlevania boss, or the absolute chaos of playing Contra with a friend and yelling at them for getting you killed. Now, imagine if all of those moments, the intensity, the cinematic highs, the little gameplay details that made you fall in love with gaming in the first place, were blended together into one experience. Not just stitched together randomly, but mixed with the kind of creative insanity that only someone like Joseph Fares could dream up. That's split fiction. It doesn't just copy great ideas, it channels them, refines them, and somehow makes them all work together in a way that feels fresh. It's not just another action game. It's not just another cinematic story. It's that rare kind of game that reminds you why you fell in love with gaming in the first place. And the crazy part? It feels familiar, but it's also something totally new. It's doing what great games do best, making you feel like a kid again, wide-eyed, controller in hand, completely lost in the moment. So yeah, split fiction is awesome, and I think you're gonna love it. Alright, let's talk about what's going on with Xbox, because things are moving fast. So for the past few weeks, there's been a lot of speculation about when the next Xbox is coming and what it's actually going to be. Originally, there were reports that a new Xbox could launch as early as 2026, with dev kits supposedly being used to develop Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4. But now, insider Jez Corden from Windows Central is saying that's not the case. Instead, the timeline looks much more like 2027, which would put it right in line with when we're expecting the PlayStation 6 to drop. And here's the wild part. This next Xbox, it's going to be even more PC-like than ever before. Microsoft is reportedly moving away from the traditional locked-down console structure and leaning even harder into the Windows ecosystem. That means instead of a custom-built console like we're used to, this next-gen Xbox could be designed more like a high-end gaming PC in a console-friendly shell. It'll still have specific hardware and optimizations, but in theory, it could be running off-the-shelf PC parts rather than fully custom chips. On top of that, the biggest surprise? They're working on an Xbox-branded handheld, and it could be out as early as late 2025. That's next year. It's codenamed Kennen, and from what's being reported, it's going to be more like a Windows-based gaming device than a traditional Xbox. Think Steam Deck or ROG Ally, but with an official Xbox feel, complete with the Xbox guide button and UI. The idea is that this handheld won't just play Xbox games. It'll run Windows, have full access to Game Pass, Steam, and the Microsoft Store, and basically function like a portable PC. That's a big shift from the way Xbox has done hardware in the past, but honestly, it makes a lot of sense, especially with how much Microsoft is focusing on Game Pass and cloud gaming. But that's just the first wave of what's coming. They want this next Xbox to be as close to Windows as possible, which would make it way easier for developers to optimize PC games for Xbox without jumping through a bunch of extra hoops. And get this, they're also exploring bringing third-party storefronts like Steam, Epic Games Store, and GOG directly to the console. If that actually happens, it would mean an Xbox where you could buy and play games from basically anywhere, instead of being locked into Microsoft Microsoft's store. On top of that, they're working on new controllers with direct-to-cloud connectivity, so you can seamlessly switch between devices without dealing with pairing issues. It's clear that Microsoft is looking beyond the traditional console model and moving towards something way more flexible. But here's where things get a little complicated. Microsoft has been pushing Xbox games onto PlayStation, stuff like Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves, which has made a lot of Xbox fans nervous. Some people feel like Xbox as a brand is getting deprioritized, and that this whole Play Anywhere strategy is coming at the cost of what made Xbox. Well, Xbox. Microsoft isn't really trying to compete with PlayStation in the traditional sense anymore, and that's a huge shift from how things were in past generations. A separate report says they're working with a PC gaming manufacturer, think Lenovo, Razer, or Asus, on a Windows-based Xbox handheld, and it could launch as early as late 2025. Unlike the Steam Deck or Asus ROG Ally, this wouldn't just be a general PC handheld, it would be Xbox branded, with full Game Pass support, Microsoft Store integration, and native Xbox UI elements. But since it's still running Windows, you could, in theory, install Steam, Epic Games Store, and even PlayStation-published games that are available on PC. Which brings up a really interesting question. What happens if Sony games start running natively on an Xbox handheld? Sony has been pushing more of its exclusives onto PC, and if this new handheld is just a Windows machine in an Xbox shell, then suddenly you could be playing Spider-Man or The Last of Us on an Xbox device. That would be awkward, to say the least. Would Sony even try to block it? Could they? All of this points to something we've been seeing for a while now. Microsoft is shifting away from the traditional console business. They've already been putting their games on PlayStation, their hardware sales are down quarter after quarter, and they're clearly not trying to go head-to-head with Sony anymore. Instead of selling a box and locking players into an ecosystem, they're expanding Xbox as a platform through Game Pass, cloud gaming, and now possibly an entire line of PC-based devices. Sony, on the other hand, seems to be sticking to the traditional console model. They're still treating PlayStation as a closed ecosystem where exclusives drive hardware sales. And with the PS6 expected in 2027, it looks like Sony is preparing for another traditional console cycle, while Microsoft is just doing something completely different. So now, the big question is Microsoft still truly committed to the console space, or are they slowly phasing out traditional Xbox hardware altogether? And if the next Xbox is basically a PC, does that make Sony's approach feel outdated, or does it actually put PlayStation in an even stronger position? Let's go over everything coming to PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium this month because, man, there's a lot to break down. First off, if you're into MMA, you're probably going to want to check out UFC 5. It's coming to PS5 and has some big changes, like a more realistic damage system that actually affects your fighter's stats as the fight goes on. So if you've ever wanted to feel the frustration of getting rocked in round 1 and having to fight through it, this is the game for you. It also makes the ground game more intense with new transition-based submissions, which is great if you like grappling. If you don't, well, it's still fun to just knock people out online. That's dropping on March 18th. Now, the one I know a lot of people have been waiting for, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. This one is for both PS4 and PS5, and it goes back to the side-scrolling, fast-paced action platforming that made the older games so good. If you love tight movement, satisfying combos, and puzzles that actually make you think, this game is 100% worth trying. It only came out a couple of months ago, so seeing it on PS Plus already is kind of wild. If you've been on the fence about it, now's your chance. Now, for something a little more chaotic, we've got Captain Tsubasa: Rise of New Champions. It's technically a football, soccer game, but it's nothing like FIFA. It plays like an over-the-top anime with ridiculous special moves, insane tackles, and full-on anime-style cinematics during matches. Even if you're not into football, this game is pure fun just because of how insane it gets. And yes, it has online multiplayer, so if you've ever wanted to score a goal with a literal anime super move, you can. And that's just the start. There's Mobile Suit Gundam: Battle Operation Code Fairy, which is a single-player mech action game. If you're into giant robots, this one might be worth checking out. Then there's Arcade Paradise, which is part business sim, part retro arcade collection, where you actually manage and build your own own arcade while playing all the classic style games inside it. Super addicting. There's also Bang on Balls Chronicles, and I don't even know how to describe this one besides pure chaos. It's an open world platformer, but instead of playing as a normal character, you're a rolling ball. And somehow it turns into a full-on action-adventure game where you explore different historical settings while smashing into everything. It looks dumb in the best way possible. And then there's Siberia, The World Before, which is a story-driven adventure game with a split timeline set in both 1937 and 2004. If you like narrative-heavy games with a ton of atmosphere, this one might be for you. Now, for PS Plus Premium members, there's actually some pretty big classics dropping this month. The original Armored Core trilogy is finally coming to the Classics catalog, which is huge for fans of From Software. So if you're someone who got into Armored Core 6 last year and want to see where the whole series started, now's your chance. This includes the first game, its prequel, Project Phantasma, and the final game in the original trilogy, Master of Arena. And yeah, these are PS1 era mech games, so they might feel a little clunky compared to modern stuff, but they're a great piece of gaming history. Oh, and if you've got a PSVR 2, Arcade Paradise VR is being added as well. If you liked the regular version, now you can literally step inside your own arcade. So yeah, there's a lot to dig into this month. You've got fighting, platforming, giant robots, anime football, and even an open world game where you play as a rolling ball. Are you grabbing anything from this lineup, or are you waiting for next month's drop? So, GTA 6 might be launching at $100, and yeah, people are not happy. Here's where this leak comes from. A Swiss retailer briefly put up a pre-order page for GTA 6, listing it at 99 Swiss francs, which is roughly $112 when converted. But, and this is important, Swiss VAT is only 7%, so even after taxes, that price is still pretty close to $100 pre-tax in the US. That means this probably isn't some inflated placeholder price. This could actually be what Rockstar is planning to charge at launch. And let's be real, a $100 base game is uncharted territory. We've already seen games jump from $60 to $70 this generation, which fine, we dealt with it. But if GTA 6 launches at $100 and sells millions anyway, you know publishers are going to use it as an excuse to make that the new standard. Now, Rockstar is a unique case. They could put GTA 6 at any price, and it would still sell like crazy. This is a game that has been in development for over a decade. The hype is astronomical. But here's the thing, this isn't just about Rockstar. If GTA 6 launches at $100, you know other big publishers are gonna take notes. We're already seeing rumors that Switch 2 games might start at $70 instead of $60. And if Rockstar gets away with selling GTA 6 for $100, what's stopping EA, Activision, or Sony from doing the same? And what about special editions? If the base game is $100, then what's the deluxe edition? $130? $150? A collector's edition could easily push $200 plus at this rate. And that's before we even get into microtransactions, which GTA Online is infamous for. We already know Rockstar is going to milk GTA 6 for years. So why are they charging more than ever upfront when they're guaranteed to make billions off shark cards anyway? It kind of makes you wonder, if this is where game pricing is heading, where does it stop? Are we just gonna sit back and let publishers push that line further and further? So The Last of Us Part 3 might actually be happening. Or maybe not. It's kinda messy. A new rumor from industry insider Daniel Richtman claims that the game is already in advanced production, which, if true, means Naughty Dog has been working on it for a while. Apparently, some actors are already cast, and some scenes have even been filmed. That sounds pretty far along, right? But here's the weird part. Just recently, Neil Druckmann, the guy who basically is The Last of Us, said, "Don't bet on there being more of The Last of Us." This could be it. That's a huge statement, especially considering how big this franchise has become. Both games were massive successes, both critically and commercially. The first game is considered one of the best ever made. Sony knows this is a goldmine, so why would they just stop? Well, Druckmann has said before that they'd only make another game if they had a story worth telling. Back in 2023, he told BuzzFeed that Sony doesn't pressure Naughty Dog into sequels. It's entirely up to them. And that makes sense. Part 2 already had a very definitive ending. So does that mean they've actually come up with a new story? Maybe. Or maybe they're just exploring ideas. We've already seen Naughty Dog cancel a Last of Us multiplayer spin-off, so nothing is guaranteed until it's officially announced. And even then, we all know how game development works. Things can get scrapped anytime. In the meantime, Naughty Dog is working on their next big project, Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, which got revealed at the Game Awards last year. Plus, there's HBO's Last of Us series, which is already confirmed for at least 3 seasons. Season 2 drops on April 13th, 2025, and since they're splitting Part 2 across multiple seasons, there's a chance we get more time with Joel, depending on how they adapt things. So, what's the deal? Is The Last of Us Part 3 actually in development? Or is this just another case of the internet getting ahead of itself? Would Naughty Dog really walk away from one of the biggest franchises in gaming? So, Naughty Dog's next big game, Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, is still evolving, which, if you were hoping for a release anytime soon, yeah, that's not happening. Neil Druckmann recently talked about it in Sony's creator-to-creator video series, and his wording makes it sound like the game is still in a pretty early stage. He literally said, "I still don't know exactly what this thing is going to look like at the end. I have a theory, I have an idea, but it's still evolving and changing." Now, this game was first announced at the Game Awards in December 2024, but it's actually been in development since 2020, so that's already 5 years in the works. But considering The Last of Us, Part 2 took 6 years. This kind of timeline isn't unusual for Naughty Dog, and even TLOU 2 got delayed toward the end due to COVID, so there's no telling how long this one will take. As for what we do know, The Heretic Prophet is a sci-fi action game set 2,000 years in the future. The main character, Jordan A. Munn, is a bounty hunter who somehow gets stranded on a mysterious planet that literally kills anyone who enters its orbit, meaning she's completely cut off from the rest of the universe. And that's about it. We got a 4-minute reveal trailer, but Naughty Dog is keeping things very vague. We still have no idea what the gameplay is like, how the story is structured, or what the core mechanics even are. And honestly, with Druckmann himself saying he still doesn't know exactly what this game will look like, it makes you wonder just how far off are we from actually playing it? Are we talking 2027, 2028? Or is this going to be one of those games that gets delayed so much it becomes a PS6 launch title? So, Uncharted 4 is widely considered one of the best games in the series. It wrapped up Nathan Drake's story with stunning visuals, tight gameplay, and a more emotional, character-driven narrative. But despite all that praise, some fans still walked away feeling a little underwhelmed. And a lot of that comes down to pacing and tone. For one, Uncharted 4 feels very different from the previous games. The first 3 had this fast-paced, cinematic energy, pure blockbuster action with just the right amount of humor and supernatural mystery. But Uncharted 4, it slows way down. The story digs deep into Nathan's personal struggles, his strained marriage with Elena, and his complicated relationship with his long-lost brother, Sam. On paper, that sounds great. It's a more mature, introspective take on the character, but for some players, it dragged at times. The third act is where the pacing issues really stand out. Some key emotional beats, like Nate's betrayal, the fallout with Elena, and his decision to finally leave treasure hunting behind, felt rushed. Meanwhile, other sections, like exploring Madagascar or those extended platforming sequences, felt too stretched out. It's like the game couldn't decide whether to be an action-packed blockbuster or a slow-burn character drama. And then there's the lack of supernatural elements. Every Uncharted game before this had some kind of mythological or paranormal twist, like El Dorado's Cursed Spaniards, Shambhala's Blue Immortals, or the Djinn in Uncharted 3. But Uncharted 4, nothing. It's just a grounded pirate treasure story. Some fans liked the more realistic approach, but others felt it lost some of that signature Uncharted magic. A lot of these changes probably come down to the shift in leadership. Amy Hennig, who directed the first 3 games, had already started work on Uncharted 4 before leaving Naughty Dog mid-development. That's when Neil Druckmann, who was fresh off The Last of Us, stepped in. And you can really feel his influence. Instead of the high-energy adventure tone of the older games, Druckmann took the story in a slower, more grounded direction, more introspection, more emotional depth, but at the cost of some of that classic Uncharted feel. That's why opinions are still divided. Some people love the deeper character exploration. Others feel the pacing and tone weakened the impact of Nathan Drake's final chapter. So here's the question. Did Uncharted 4's more serious, slower approach elevate the series, or did it stray too far from what made Uncharted special in the first place? So, Sony's cloud gaming expansion is moving fast, and if you own a PS Portal, you just got a pretty big update. After the recent PS Plus premium streaming upgrade, you can now stream most of the PS1 and PSP games from the Classics catalog directly to the PS Portal. No PS5 required. Basically, if you're in one of the 30 countries that have access to the cloud streaming beta, you've now got a lot more to play. Sony originally said the beta would only include PS5 games from the PS Plus Extra catalog, but now, over 50 plus classic games from PlayStation 1 and PlayStation Portable have been added. That means you can stream Ape Escape, Killzone Liberation, and tons more straight to the handheld. Now, it's not everything. Some PlayStation 1 and PSP games are still missing. From what we can tell, Worms Armageddon, Grandia, and Harvest Moon, Back to Nature are still not supported. Same with Disney Pixar's Up and Toy Story 3 from the PSP lineup. But even with those gaps, this is a huge step forward for PS Portal's cloud gaming capabilities. So, is this enough to make PS Portal more appealing? Or is cloud gaming still too unreliable to be a selling point? The Witcher 4 is officially happening, and the biggest shakeup, Ciri is the main character this time. No more playing as Geralt, at least not in the way we're used to. Now, we already got a taste of how Ciri handles in The Witcher 3, but according to the developers, her combat style in The Witcher 4 is going to feel completely different from Geralt's. On CD Projekt Red's Answer Red podcast, Senior Communications Manager Pavel Berza pointed out a specific moment in the reveal trailer where Ciri finishes an attack with a somersault. He flat out said, "You don't see Geralt doing these things. He's nimble, but he feels like a block in some sense. She's like liquid compared to him." So what does that actually mean for gameplay? Well, according to game director Sebastian Kalemba, Ciri's movement will feel like someone who grew up at Kaer Morhen, but developed her own unique style. She's smaller, faster, and more agile, which means combat is going to be more fluid compared to Geralt's heavier, more methodical swordplay. Think less brute force, more speed and precision. Honestly, this makes sense. Geralt was always this seasoned, calculated warrior. His movements had weight. But Ciri, she's got elder blood. She's trained by witchers, but not bound by their rigid techniques. And she's just naturally more unpredictable in a fight. Now, as exciting as all this sounds, don't expect to actually see gameplay anytime soon. CD Projekt Red is still keeping things under wraps, and we're probably years away from launch. But they did confirm that Gwent is coming back, which is honestly just as important. Let's be real. So, the big question, do you think this switch to Ciri is the right move? Or will players miss the way Geralt's combat felt after 3 whole games of perfecting it? So, if you've been thinking about getting a PSVR 2, now might actually be the best time to do it. The headset just got a 28% price drop, knocking over $150 off, which is the lowest price it's ever been outside of Black Friday sales. Now, VR headsets can be hit or miss, but PSVR 2 is one of the best mid-range options out there if you own a PS5. It's got 4K OLED displays, a 120Hz refresh rate, a 110-degree field of view, and solid eye tracking tech. Plus, setup is way easier compared to most PC VR headsets. So even if you've never touched VR before, it's pretty stress-free. The biggest downside? It's only worth it if you have a PlayStation 5. The game library is curated, meaning you won't get the huge selection that PC-based VR offers. But there are exclusives built specifically for the headset, like Horizon Call of the Mountain, that really take advantage of its tech. If you're interested, Amazon and Best Buy both have similar offers right now, with Best Buy even bundling the Horizon game for just a few bucks more. So, what do you think? Is this price cut enough to make PlayStation VR 2 worth picking up? Or is Sony still struggling to justify its place in the VR market? So God of War is about to hit its 20th anniversary, and fans have been speculating like crazy about what Santa Monica Studio might have in store. But before anyone gets too excited, the studio studio is already trying to keep expectations in check, specifically for one of its big anniversary events. From March 15th to March 23rd, there's going to be a special exhibition at Gallery Nucleus in California, featuring 2 big cast panels with actors from both the Greek and Norse sagas of God of War. That includes T.C. Carson, the original voice of Kratos, Christopher Judge, who took over in the Norse era, and Danielle Basutti, who played a major role in the newer games. Sounds like the perfect setup for a major announcement, right? Well, Santa Monica Studio is making it very clear there are no planned announcements at this event. They're calling it a celebration of the series, a look back at 2 decades of God of War, but not a place to reveal new projects. But here's where things get tricky. Industry insider Jeff Grubb recently suggested that the rumored God of War remasters for PS5 were still happening, just not at this exact event. Instead, he said that news on those projects would come closer to the anniversary, which leaves the door open for something to drop around that time. And let's be real, Sony isn't just going to ignore the 20th anniversary of one of their biggest franchises. It's hard to imagine nothing happening. Maybe we won't see a brand new game, but a remastered collection of the older titles? That still seems possible. Now, all of this is happening at a weird time for God of War fans. Back in January, it was reported that a live service God of War game, apparently in development at Bluepoint Games, was canceled. That news dropped alongside the reveal that Days Gone Studio Bend also had a live service project scrapped. So yeah, PlayStation's big franchises are in a bit of a limbo right now. So what's next for God of War? Santa Monica is being careful with their words, but could they still have a surprise lined up? Or is this really just a moment to reflect on the past without teasing the future? If you want to be ahead of all the gaming leaks and news, specifically PlayStation news, time for you to subscribe. And as always, a like on the video is very much appreciated.